After my abuser died, I found out my mother knew the whole time and did nothing because she blamed me. Content warning: sexual assault. This is a throwaway account because I just want to sort of scream into the virtual void about this, in a space where people who might see it aren't close to it or anything. In that same vein, I'm not exactly looking for advice here per se, but any kind of words of comfort or guidance would be greatly appreciated. I apologize if things are a bit all over the place, as this is still fairly raw. Obviously, heavy trigger warnings for abuse/CSA. The abuser mentioned was my stepfather, who I'll just call Jay. My biological dad passed away when I was still a baby, and my mum met Jay when I was 7, married him when I was 9. In hindsight, I think the abuse started right away, though it was subtle at first and really more grooming than outward abuse. Like, Jay would be watching me while my mum worked a night shift and he would let me stay up way past my bedtime and watch TV shows and films I wasn't supposed to if I promised not to tell her, or he'd take me on a fishing trip and while we were out buy me sweets or fast food that I wasn't usually allowed and call it our little secret. Lots of things of that nature which, as an adult, I can see were him testing the waters to see how well he could get me to keep things from other grown-ups. Once he'd realized that I wasn't going to tell on him, he really ramped up the grooming and made it overtly romantic. He crossed the line and made it physical a little bit before my 12th birthday. At that stage I had a lot of very confusing feelings because I was sort of conceptually aware that there are bad people who do bad things to little kids and that's why you never use your real name online, etc. However, he'd also pretty effectively convinced me that we were in love and he wasn't physically hurting me at that stage. In fact, he often made a great point of the fact that he was going out of his way not to hurt me, so I figured that he couldn't be one of the bad people and this was something different. Unfortunately, the abuse went on for all of my teens and into my early adulthood. Equally unfortunately, Jay was incredibly good at hiding it. Recent revelations aside, I really do believe that nobody had any idea what was going on except for me and him. We had various family members live/stay with us for extended periods during that time, and he even managed to keep them in the dark about it. At first I didn't tell anybody because he'd really sold me on the whole other people won't understand that we're in love, they'll think it's wrong, and we'll both get into trouble shtick that a lot of these sickos use. To be honest, even after it had registered that I wouldn't get into trouble if I told I was so convinced that I was in love with him that I didn't want him to get into trouble, so I kept it quiet for his sake. The first and only time I actually threatened to tell was when I was 16, which is the age of consent here, so to my mind there was no longer any reason that we would get into trouble. At that point I was sick of sneaking around with him, so I tried to give him an ultimatum of either divorcing my mum so he and I could be together, or I was going to tell her that we'd been having an affair * the entire time. Obviously that freaked him out and he leveraged my mum's mental health and the fact that she got violently depressed/suicidal when my dad died, saying it would happen again if their relationship also ended and either way it would be on me if she did anything to herself as a result of it. After that I attempted to break up with him, saying I'd given him a choice of my mum or me and he'd chosen her, so we were done. Obviously, given this wasn't actually a relationship, he did not take that, and this was the stage where he actually started to both get violent with me and threaten to harm other people. Pertinently, he and my mum had recently gained custody of my cousin who is 3 years younger than me, and Jay frequently told me that if I didn't give him what he wanted then he would go and take it from her instead. This is a big part of why it carried on for so long. I didn't actually move out of their house until I was 22 because I was so scared that if I left before she did, he would hurt her and it would be my fault. Best believe I moved right out of that place like a week after she left for university. I did actually try to tell another family member everything a few months after I moved out, but they didn't believe me. At that point, probably unsurprisingly, I was doing really badly with my mental health and that had manifested into a pretty bad drinking problem and getting mixed up in some petty crimes. So I wasn't a great person, and I also didn't have a great hold of my temper and would lash out at people sometimes. The family member I told thought I was lying as a part of all of that and basically convinced me that anybody else I told would think the same thing, so I didn't bother telling anybody else for years. I tried to stay in the same area and keep in contact with the family and stuff for a bit, but his behavior didn't change at all and any family events just felt like I was throwing myself back into the fire, so I moved far away and went low contact with pretty much everybody. Jay died in March of this year. I absolutely cannot overstate the immense sense of relief I felt when I found out. It was like this horrible heavy weight I'd been carrying my whole life was just gone. It's cheesy, I know, but I genuinely felt free for the first time ever when I was told he'd passed. I feel like I can actually start working on healing and fully repairing my mental health knowing there is no chance he will ever be around to ruin it again, which has been incredibly nice to finally experience at my big age of 30. It's also meant I can rebuild relationships with my family members, which has sort of been a mixed bag. It's felt easier to explain to people what happened and why I went low contact now he's gone. Responses have varied from people believing me and telling me they were sorry they didn't realize and do something at the time to folks accusing me of lying about a guy who isn't here to defend himself. It's not been easy, but it's been nice to get back those relationships I've been able to mend. I knew my mum was going to be the most difficult one. As I mentioned, she's historically struggled with her mental health, which had an unfortunate impact on our relationship when I was growing up. Also, I spent a lot of years resenting her because I felt like we were sharing Jay and didn't like it. As it turns out, that feeling was a lot more reciprocated than I thought. 2 weeks ago, I finally sat my mother down and told her everything I have outlined above. To be honest, I kind of half expected her to accuse me of lying and defend him because she really did love that guy to a fault. Instead, she straight up told me that she knew and that she'd known pretty much the whole time. She said she'd suspected it for a while and got confirmation when I was 12 and she found some secret messages between Jay and I that he'd not gotten round to deleting yet. She said the reason she didn't do anything about it is because it was clear from the messages that she'd seen that I was a willing participant in everything and she wasn't going to have him go down for something that was my fault, and backed this up by saying if I really didn't want it I would have told her the first time he touched me or did anything I was uncomfortable with. She also said that it would be humiliating for her if it got out that she'd married a guy who would rather have her own son. She did concede that she feels a bit guilty for not intervening when she realized he'd started hitting me, and said she probably would have intervened if she knew he was also threatening my cousin, but that she doesn't feel guilty for letting me deal with the consequences of throwing my self at an older, married man. I left that interaction absolutely shell-shocked. I haven't spoken to my mother since. It's kind of put a stopper on the whole healing my mental health thing, and I feel like I've been spiraling ever since. I have not relapsed with drinking yet, but it's a very near thing. I had planned to go to family Christmas for the first time in years this year, but now I don't think I will because I know that she'll be there. In a lot of ways, I feel thrown back to when it was all actively happening and I keep thinking over and over stuff and getting stuck in it. Like, what if I had told her when I was 16? Would it have even changed anything? If she feels guilty that she didn't intervene when he turned violent, would she have helped me if I'd gone with that angle and told her at the time? If I'd gone to the police like I sometimes thought about, would she have confessed that she knew? Would she have accused me of lying and stood by him and let it keep happening anyway? Did I never have an out and was it always just going to be like this? Should I have done more to try and put a stop to it sooner? If I'd told her he was buying me ice cream and letting me watch South Park when I was 8, would none of this have happened? Apologies that this was a long post. Venting to strangers is helpful. Hope you all have the best rest of your weekend possible. Asterisk for absolute clarity. I do understand now that what was going on was in no way romantic or an affair or anything of the sort, and it was just abuse. These were just my feelings at the time as a very effectively groomed kid with a lot of teenage hormones and an attitude problem.